Hello, it is Amy, and I have tracked my sleep for the last about 2 years. I've actually just checked the number of nights that I've done this for, and I've done this for 666 nights, or 666 nights. So I guess this is the day that we're doing this on. So I'd like to preface this a little bit with why and how I do this, and then I'm going to go a little bit into what it has taught me. So I guess I'll start with the why. The why would be that I don't sleep particularly well. I never have done ever since I was a kid. My dad doesn't, my grandma doesn't, my mum can fall asleep anywhere, and I'm perpetually jealous of that. And yeah, it's just always been an issue. It's been an issue that runs in the family, an ongoing thing, and I started tracking this, my sleep, years ago, for about a year. I think I did it for about a year, and then I stopped for about a year, and then I did it again for a year. But it's all on the same account, so cumulatively it has been about 2 years, or 666 nights. So all of this data that I have together, I can then use to work out what helps me sleep and what doesn't help me sleep. Basically, it was just, I did this out of curiosity to see if maybe I was sleeping a lot but I wasn't getting into certain sleep stages, or if certain things were helping me sleep, or if the things that I thought were helping me sleep were actually helping me sleep, etc. Just to learn about myself, and to have data on myself. I know it sounds like a strange thing to say, but there is ways to collect information about myself, as we are well aware in this day and age. So I'd like to do that, and if I can have this information and know these things, surely none of that is ever going to be a negative thing. Learning more about my natural sleep cycles and about how my body reacts to certain things, never going to be a bad thing. I do this through an app called Sleep Cycle, which I'm going to give you a quick tour of. This is not sponsored by the app. There is no affiliation with them whatsoever. They have no idea that I'm doing this. It's just the app that I use. I tried a couple of apps when I first started it. This is by far the best. I also track my sleep through my Fitbit, which needs charging, which is why it's not on. However, I'll tell you in a second why I use this app rather than just doing it through my Fitbit. But yeah, I'll give you a quick tour of the app. So the main thing that the app advertises itself as is an alarm, because basically you put a time in and it gives you a window. I'll put an image on the screen so you can see it properly, but it gives you a window. So I have my window set to 15 minutes, but you can change that, and in those 15 minutes it will pick the most awake that you are in your cycle, and the alarm will go off then. So in theory, your alarm is never going off when you're in deep sleep. So you wake up naturally more awake already, if that makes sense. And it works. This really does work. This is, I'll go into pros and cons of this app later and what I think about it, but this is the part of this app that even if you're not bothered about tracking your sleep, this is the number one bit that I think you should use, because it definitely works. You can also set it to just go off, and you can set it to not have an alarm. So there is a couple different options there. I believe that's the free element. You do have to pay for this. I was quite lucky because I paid for this quite early on, when you just paid outright, but I now think it is a subscription. I'm not entirely sure, but because I paid for it outright, I've paid for it forever. I think it's worth it, but that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't pay for, and I don't think people should have to pay for better sleep and things like that, even though obviously you can, because that's just how the world works. So basically I've decided that I want to wake up at 10:30, and I press start, and then it comes up with all of these notes, and I'm going to go through these in a second, but basically those notes are, I added them, and each one of those corresponds to a certain situation or certain thing that happened in the day or before I go to bed that is common enough that it might come up and affect my sleep. I'm not going to go through all of them because some of them are so specific to my life that they're not going to be helpful to anyone, or also are quite personal. I don't particularly want to put them out on the internet. But I have things like read before I went to bed, shower before I went to bed, I ate my dinner late, or I had caffeine late, or things like that is what I put in. It also has some default ones like if you have a headache during the day and things like that, most of which I've kept on. So that's the first thing that happens, and it then goes into like this blank screen, so I'll show you that. And this screen will stay on until the morning. You leave it on this. You can go off the app if you wake up in the middle of the night and you want to go off it, and you can just click back onto it and it will only stop. You click quit. Now I then have it set, it's not going to do it because it's not going to count as a full night, but I then have that set to record my heartbeat. So a torch will come out. I don't know if you've ever used like a heart monitor on a phone before, but your torch will turn on, you put your finger behind the torch over the camera and the torch, and it uses the torch to like look at your veins, I think, and then it like counts your heart rate, works out your heart rate, so it can tell you what your heart rate is when you wake up. I'm not entirely sure how relevant that is or what I'm going to do with that information, but I have it. So the journal is, so that was last night. I got 91% sleep quality. I was in bed for 11 hours and 12 minutes. I was asleep for 9 hours and 40 minutes. It also will record, you can turn this off because I know some people find this creepy. It will record noises that it hears. So if you sleep talk, it will record you sleep talking. It has a bunch of sounds recorded for last night. All of these are the podcasts I was listening to. So yeah, this is this week. I didn't do it on Tuesday. Either because I forgot or like I didn't do the whole night, so I just deleted it. And you can see all the ones with rings on are ones where I recorded. So yeah, let's go through what I have learnt. So over 666 nights, I have an average sleep quality of 89%. That sounds very high, but I think this is pretty interesting. I don't feel like I sleep 89% well. I wake up a lot, and my Fitbit tells me other things about how I'm actually not getting into that deep of a sleep, which should bring that average down. However, it being around roughly the same thing every day means that, whereas I'm not entirely sure that 89% is accurate, it does mean that the modifiers should be accurate. So yeah, I would take that percentage with a pinch of salt. It doesn't mean that it sounds like it means that I sleep really well. I don't sleep really well. And my lived experience is more accurate than what this app is telling me. As I said, I do also track my sleep with my Fitbit, but it doesn't have all the journal stuff, so it's less, it gives me less data. However, I do think it is more accurate when sometimes I'll check this app and think, I don't think that's right. I think I was awake at that time and it hasn't logged me being awake at that time. And I'll check my Fitbit and my Fitbit will say that I was awake at that time. So yeah, there is like, I don't think it's the most accurate. I do think you have to use it quite a bit in order to get like reliable information out of it. But yeah, that's up to you. It's up to you whether or not you think that is worth it. I wish there was a way to sync my Fitbit with this app, but I do think the Fitbit is always going to be more accurate because your Fitbit is on your wrist, so it knows when you're moving. It can also track your heart rate if you have one of those Fitbits, whereas the sleep app, the way that it does it is by sound. So if you roll over, it hears you rolling over and goes, you're more awake than you were before, basically, is how it works it out, which is not going to be as accurate as like doing it by your heart rate. On average, I spend 8 hours and 59 minutes in bed every night, so almost exactly 9 hours. So let's go on statistics. Okay, so this is my sleep quality graph. It doesn't actually vary that much. You can see April 2019, October it went down, April it went up, but sits around 90% pretty consistently. So yeah, this is my all-time data. It also shows you this, which is your regularity, which is the time that you go to bed and wake up. This one is a lot more all over the place. It goes down from like 75% up to like 85%. Sorry, 65% to about 85%. Yeah, this is a lot more all over the place. And it's probably the biggest thing that I could work on here. This is the time that I went to bed. It's usually, looks like it's between about 12 and 12:40 is about the time that I usually go to sleep. It varies a little bit, but it doesn't vary that much, which is interesting considering how much the regularity is all over the place when this one looks pretty consistent. I guess when you combine that with this one, which is woke up, that's when it goes a little bit all over the place. I usually wake up sometime between like 8 and 9:30 from the looks of this. But yeah, that does vary slightly, and I've been waking up a bit later recently because pandemic. Time in bed is almost exactly 9 hours on average. You can see that the grey lines go all over the place, but I mean it stays pretty consistently at an average 9 hours. Same with the sleep. Again, this varies a lot, but it definitely seems to be averaging pretty solidly around 8 hours. This is a particularly interesting graph, asleep after. It used to take me just under 30 minutes, and now it's going up to maybe 35 to 40 minutes, and there was such a significant jump from April 2019, in between April 2019 and October 2019. There is such a significant jump in how long it takes me to fall asleep, which is wild. Why did that happen? So this is the heart rate one that I was telling you about. It seems pretty consistent, about 70 beats per minute. It's gone up recently. I don't know what that means. Maybe a stress response, which would be reasonable. Steps I do a day are usually about 5,000. However, this it has dipped recently, which again makes sense. However, this is based on what my phone thinks I've walked. It's not connected to my Fitbit. So this is usually lower than the actual amount. I would say it's closer to maybe 6 or 7 that I do a day pre-pandemic. I don't do that anymore. Okay, so this is we're gonna look at some of the more interesting bits. I'm going to save the best ones till last. So we're going to do affected by location. I'll keep the notes till last. So affected by location, the best place I slept was in Malaga, plus 6%. I don't know why that was. It might have been because it was warm. It might have actually been because it was cold, because the room was really cold because of the aircon and the white noise from the aircon. And also I was relaxed because I was on holiday. York -2, Swindon -3. Swindon I was there for maybe 2-3 days, so that isn't the most accurate. York has always been consistently -2. I sleep 2% worse in York, and I have done since I started doing this. It is so wild. I have no idea why. Yeah, that is wild. And 2% doesn't sound like a lot. But when you compare that to Gateshead, for example, the difference between me sleeping here versus me sleeping back home is 4%. And most of these percentages are quite low, and 4% is actually quite high compared to a lot of them. So that is actually quite a significant difference, and I have absolutely no idea why. I sleep 4% better when it snows. I think that might be a sound thing, when the whole world sounds like it's snowed. I sleep a lot worse when it rains, which is interesting to me because I thought I slept better. I liked the noise of it, and I use the noise of it to help me sleep sometimes. So yeah, this is interesting to me. This one is the most interesting in the whole thing, and I absolutely love it. Look at this. Look at how wild this is. So this is, it's actually shifted slightly in the past couple of months. It used to almost be exactly, I slept better at a full moon and worse when there was less moon. Almost exactly, and it has actually shifted very slightly along over the past couple of months. This is wild to me, that this is so consistent and so perfect on here. The percentage it's doing it by is less than 2%, so it's really small, but it's so there's such an obvious link here, and that is wild. So now the one that you actually probably came here for, and that is what helps me sleep and what doesn't. So unfortunately, the things that made me sleep worse, that list is a lot longer. So I'm not going to show all of these for reasons that I laid out before. But some of them I will tell you. The biggest one is codeine. This was -16%. Bearing in mind the one below that is -5%, the closest. This was because it turns out I'm allergic to codeine. I was only on it for a week. I was allergic to it. So that is why it's at -16%, which is by far the biggest thing. Nap during day is -5. If I have a nap during the day, it stops me sleeping. And I'm gonna put a screenshot in here of the ones that I'm chill to share online, but I'm just gonna read some of them out. Having a stressful day, drinking Coke after 8 if I'm ill, if I'm having a stressful next day, if I did a lot of exercise during the day, if I'm at uni, so if I'm in York, if I read before bed on my phone, if I have my meal after 8, if I have a busy brain, so I have a lot to think about, if my alarm is set, if I'm in a lot of pain that day, if my anxiety is bad, if I'm using my weighted blanket, which is a surprise one, if my body is tired, if I had a bath, if I'm not tired, or if I use my phone after bed, all of those things make me sleep worse to varying degrees. You can see them all here. The newest one is the weighted blanket one, which I'm really surprised at. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but let's look at some of the fewer things that increase my sleep quality. So I'm going to put that here. Taking magnesium helps me sleep. We're going to talk about that in a second. If I had a good day, if I'm back home, my Gateshead, if I drank tea, like a cup of tea after 8 o'clock, if I had a shower, and if my rollers are in, my battery is flashing. The two things I want to highlight here are magnesium and weighted blanket, and I think they really demonstrate how useful this app is. And that is that for magnesium, if you'd asked me, I didn't think it affected anything, but it has. It's a 3% increase, which is quite high compared to a lot of these. So that is useful to know, and it means that I now have that information, and I know that taking magnesium before I go to bed helps me sleep. The opposite with weighted blanket. If you ask me, I thought it helped me sleep. It does not, according to this. I would have continued using a weighted blanket to sleep if I didn't know that. In fact, I do still use a weighted blanket to sleep because I'm waiting to see if I want a couple more months of data on that to double check, because I do like to do these things for a couple months before I say that the data is completely solid, because of how I don't think it's the most accurate app, and I would like to make sure that it averages out as much as possible. So yeah, that's all the things that I learned from tracking my sleep for 2 years. I don't know if any of these things are applicable to you. There is also a bunch of things that I log that haven't showed up in here. Like if I read before I go to bed, if I use sleep balm, etc. are all things that I log in the app that haven't shown up, which I assume means they don't have an effect on how I sleep, which is interesting in itself. And now I know that they don't have an effect, and me doing those things or not doing those things isn't going to affect my sleep, which is also interesting data in itself. So yeah, I would recommend doing this. Might teach you some things to help. As you can see with the percentages, and as I've said about that app being that accurate, if you are really bad insomniac and you're really struggling with this, do not rely on an app like this. It's fun, and you might learn some good things, and it might improve your sleep. However, it's not going to be this big life-changing thing. It's not going to change how you sleep every single night. It's not going to, just do it, but maybe also go see a doctor if you need to see a doctor. So yeah, I think that's everything that I learned, and I'm gonna go because my battery is flashing at me. If you have any requests or questions, then leave them down in the comments. New videos every Wednesday, like, subscribe and all that jazz, and I will see you next week. I've just realised I've probably been scratching my nose all the way through this video. It's really itchy. I don't know why it's so itchy. I apologise if I've been doing that. Okay, I'm gonna go. See you next week. Bye.